Whipple Family Misadventures, Book 1, Welcome to the Parent of an Alien Hedgehog Club, Chapter 19. As soon as they got to the station, Wade pulled in and got out of the car, his mind racing like a hamster on a wheel. As soon as Silver climbed out of the car, the small hedgehog tugged on Wade's arm, shrieking when Wade turned towards him.
Did you? What you're going to do with us?
I haven't made a decision yet.
Wade was completely truthful. He had not even begun to think of what kind of punishment they deserve, or what he should do moving forward. It had been mentally filed under deal with later.
Come on, let's go.
Wade marched both of them past a startled Kathleen and towards his desk.
Both of you sit there and don't touch anything.
He ordered, leading them before he stalked back into an empty lockup and slammed the door behind him. Taking out his phone, Wade quickly dialed a number, waiting as it rang and rang and rang. Pete wasn't answering. His estranged father was doing who knows what, going who knows where, possibly putting all of them in danger. In that moment, Wade understood how people could be frustrated enough to hurl their phones at the wall.
Now you don't want to talk to me?
He said out loud and then began to pace back and forth. All of this was the cherry on top of the sundae that he never even wanted. Tom opened the door and looked at him, raising an eyebrow.
Everything okay?
Throwing himself down on one of the benches that was tucked into the corner, Wade put his head in his hands.
Give me a moment.
This was the hardest part, having to deal with his own emotions before he could even think about going out and handle the boys. Forcing himself to sit there and think about why he was upset, what was causing his stress, and first how to calm down. A good deal of this had to do with all the anger and pain that came with seeing Pete again and all the emotions his childhood that it brought back. But that was his problem to deal with. The kids didn't deserve to have that dumped on them. After a few minutes of silence, he raised his head. Tom was still there, leaning against the gray wall, waiting patiently for as long as was needed.
The kids were acting weird this morning, so I decided to drop in unannounced to see what they were up to. They invited my estranged father over to visit.
Tom's eyes widened.
You mean the one who...
Abandoned me and my mother when I was 8 and haven't seen since? That one? You know what? The worst part of this isn't that my kids lied to me or that they snuck around behind my back or even how they meddled in my business and invited someone that I had a lot of issues with to the house and subsequently back into my life. It's the fact they put themselves in danger and neither of them know it. If Pete honestly thought he was in danger while at the house, or if he's just angry enough about the last 30 years to decide he wants revenge and goes to the FBI, that's the worst part.
Wade didn't even know if he could tell them about that little detail. If the FBI or anyone else did show up and tried to capture them, if this caused massive problems, was it fair to give them the knowledge that it technically happened because of their actions? It wasn't. Although Wade knew he had to find a way to let them know that while this town was mostly safe, they still had to be careful. This little bubble of safety was still delicate. He wanted them to have as much of a normal childhood as they could, but they couldn't be careless. Because while this town was mostly okay with alien hedgehogs with superpowers, the world was not.
I'm sorry. This could affect you and Maddie and Sonic as well.
We'll deal with that if it comes to that. Did you try calling him?
Wade gave a curt nod.
He didn't answer.
Keep trying. At least try to figure out if he feels like informing the men in black about this. Maybe he won't.
Maybe.
Wade muttered as he had no idea, but his anxious mind was constantly going to the worst possible scenario. It made focusing on anything else difficult.
I have no idea how to handle this. Not just about Pete, but the kids. What do I do with them?
Was this on purpose or accident? Like, did they know what they were doing?
Wade thought about that. How they planned it for it to happen when he was gone. How shocked and guilty they looked when he'd come home.
I'd say some of both. I don't even know why they would do this.
Because they're kids and still figuring everything out. The brains are still developing, and they don't have the skills or experience to stop and think through what they're doing. It doesn't make what they did right, of course, but still.
Wade shot him a sideways look.
Sonic ever done anything like this?
Of course. One time he was zooming around the house at high speed, which he knows not to do, and he accidentally put a hole in the wall. Not a huge one, but still. Instead of telling me or Maddie, he tried to fix it on his own. Except when he was attempting to paint it over, he spilled the can of paint and it went literally everywhere.
Wade winced.
It's funny now, but it wasn't funny when we found our hedgehog half covered in paint, frantically trying to scoop the remaining paint back into the can with his hands. And it was just making an even worse mess. Anyway, the point is, kids do dumb stuff. This won't be the only dumb thing they ever do. Welcome to being a parent, but do you want my opinion?
Sure.
Explain what they did wrong and address that. The lying, the sneaking around, if any rules were broken. Make sure they understand before you get into punishment. Oh, and if things go really badly with your dad, let me know. He doesn't know me, right? Nadia and I can pretend to be government officials that met with him, and we'll look into this all.
That made sense. Wade nodded again. In spite of himself, that brought a small smile to his face.
No one's taking those kids away. No one.
You're a really good friend, Tom. I really appreciate both you and Maddie. Thank you so much. I don't know how to repay you, but thank you.
Wade said and honestly meant it. He had no idea how he could have handled any of this without help.
What am I gonna do with you two?
That one sentence made Silver feel sick, worse than he had felt in a long time. What did that mean? Biting his lip, Silver tried to think about what their dad might do. Tom slowly came out of his office and glanced down the hallway after the door slammed really hard, toward that mysterious back room that neither him nor Sonic or Shadow had ever been to.
What's going on?
He asked, reaching out to turn the chair that Silver and Shadow were squeezed onto toward him. Before it had been fun to spin on, today it wasn't. Shadow just stared straight ahead and didn't respond, being everything to Silver.
We did something really bad, and now he's really mad at us.
Silver's ears had been flat for almost 10 minutes now. Tom just gazed at them for a moment before he took another look down the hallway.
What did you do?
Nervously, Silver looked at Shadow and then looked down. He didn't want to tell Tom and make Sonic's dad also think that they were awful kids.
I don't wanna.
He mumbled, squeezing his eyes shut. The other human blinked and then looked down the hallway again.
I'll go talk to him.
He finally said and walked away, leaving them there. As soon as he was gone, Shadow slid off the chair onto the ground and crawled under their dad's desk. Silver stared after him, wondering if that was disobeying what their dad had told him to do. Then realized it wasn't. He only said sit and don't touch. After a few seconds, Silver joined him, pointing the chair as close as he could to the desk so that they were enclosed in mostly darkness underneath the desk. For a few minutes, things felt slightly better. Next to him, Shadow still wasn't talking, only sitting on the floor with his legs pulled up to his chest. Silver wondered if he was scared or worried too.
What do you think Dad's gonna do?
Shadow still didn't respond. It made Silver wish really hard that the other hedgehog could have picked another time to stop responding to everything around him. This was really bad and kinda scary, and he needed support right now. At least then it would feel like they were facing this together, and not like he was all by himself. A horrible thought dawned. What if what their dad meant was he was so angry he was thinking about getting rid of them? Silver had never realized that it came with conditions, that the situation was so fragile, that if they weren't good enough, he might not want them anymore. Maybe that's what he meant. He was trying to figure out how he could dump them. He once said he wouldn't turn them out into the snow. Maybe he would take them to where there wasn't any snow. After what seemed like forever, there were footsteps. Also, two big shadows passed over the tiny bit of light that came under the desk.
Where did they? I told them to stay here.
Hurriedly, Silver shoved the chair away so he could see them, and no, they hadn't run away or anything. They were just under the desk. After a brief pause, his dad dropped to one knee to peer at them. his eyebrows deeply furrowed, looking mystified.
What are you two doing under there?
It was the type of question that didn't require an answer, so neither said anything.
Come out here.
Apparently, he had made his decision. Silver gulped, but slowly called out, Shadow following him. Usually, whenever they went somewhere, the dad didn't mind if they walked behind him. He understood that their legs were smaller and they had to take 3 steps for each one that he took. But now, he walked behind the 2 of them, using his legs to nudge them forward and into a room with a large cage that went all the way up to the ceiling, bigger than both of them, and Dad and Tom even. Instantly, Silver knew what it was. It was for humans who had been bad. There was a single window on the wall, and it had bars over it. Shadow reacted first, turning his eyes wider than normal.
You're putting us in a cage?
For the first time since Silver had met him, Shadow's voice wasn't soft or quiet, instead growing louder with every word. Silver started to back away, his eyes frantically darting around, wondering what would happen if he ran or tried to use his powers to stay out of that thing. He hadn't realized this was the decision their dad might make, or even that this room with the cage was back here, that he would make them stay here and go home without them.
What? That isn't.
You're putting them in lockup?
I don't want to go into lockup.
No one's going into lockup. I just brought you in here so we could talk. Tom, can you please give us a minute?
The other human looked relieved and shut the door after him, so all 3 of them were stuck in there. Swallowing, Silver cast another frightened look towards that cage called lockup. It was made for humans, so maybe they could have gone out, but still, cages were bad, almost as bad and terrifying as fire.
No one is going in lockup, I promise.
Wade repeated, moving so that they were facing away from the cage and looking at him instead. Their dad now looking angry, but he didn't look very happy either.
Okay, I need to know the truth. How did you call Pete? Where did you get his phone number?
Silver looked down.
It was on that note that you threw away.
You were digging around in the trash can?
No, it fell on the ground and I picked it up when I was taking the trash out and showed it to Shadow. And then we used your phone while you were in the shower last night.
My phone has a log on it.
It wasn't that hard to figure out.
The sigh their dads let out was long and weary.
Lovely. Who called him?
I did.
And you invited him to come over while I was gone?
He wanted to come over and talk.
So? Why did you even call him? Why did you guys want to talk to him? You never even met him before today.
He made you upset. I just wondered who he was and why you didn't like him.
That's none of your business. If I hadn't wanted to tell you about him, I would have. But I don't. So I didn't. So in the future, if something like this happens again, please leave it alone. So what happened was both of you both were equally involved?
When they both nodded, he kept talking.
This is not okay. I am very upset about this. Lying to me, sneaking around behind my back, taking my phone and breaking rules that you both are aware of.
For some reason that Silver didn't understand, Shadow decided to either be brave or stupid.
There's no rule about using your phone.
I didn't think there had to be. My phone, my wallet, my computer, my desk, and the stuff in my bedroom are off limits to you guys, unless I give you permission first. But back to what I was saying, I can't trust either of you right now. It seems if I'm not looking over your shoulder at every moment, you two are off getting into something that you're not supposed to. So you know what happens to kids who can't be trusted? They have to be watched at all times. So when I get back to work full-time soon, I'm getting a babysitter. You're both going to have to prove to me that you can be trusted again. On top of that, the 2 of you are grounded for 10 days. That means no desserts or electronics during that time. No TV, no Netflix, no movies. And if either of you do this again, you'll be in a lot more trouble. Do both of you understand?
With that, their dad stood up.
Now come on, I need to finish up some work here and then we'll go home.
After he and Shadow fought that one time, they were told they had to apologize and make things right. Silver had been waiting the entire time for when he could say it, but they were never even given the chance to. Maybe it was too late. Wade said nothing about whether or not he would be keeping them, but perhaps That was because he hadn't decided if he still wanted to be their dad. When he was talking about how he was very upset and there was no trust anymore, his voice was something Silver had never heard before. It was like he was disgusted with them. It probably meant he would be watching and waiting. He wanted to know if they were going to be good enough to deserve to stay with him. And why wouldn't he? People only wanted good kids, not horrible kids who lied and snuck around and, in general, were bad. Slowly, Silver followed him out of that horrible-looking room and with the big cage and the bars, and wondered how long it would take for him to decide. For now, they would just have to do their best and hope Wade would still want them after all of this. When dinner was ready that night and put on the table, Silver knew immediately that it was a test. He hated Brussels sprouts, and that was saying something, especially since sometimes he had eaten garbage in the past when there was nothing else. But out of all the foods he had tried on Earth, Brussels sprouts were the worst. They tasted gross. They felt weird in his mouth when he tried to chew them. They even looked gross, that ugly shade of green. The last time he had Brussels sprouts, Silver had told Wade all of this. But now, he must have served them just to see what they would do. It was a test, especially after what they had done earlier that day. At least Silver had experience eating foods that tasted disgusting. Sighing, he speared 2 with his fork and shoved them in his mouth, swallowing them whole with a grimace. It was harder to eat stuff like this now. In the past, he usually only ate something that he hated when there was no other choice and his stomach was cramping from pain of being empty. It was more difficult when he wasn't even hungry. The other ones didn't go down any easier. Squeezing his eyes shut after he finally finished the last one, he only hoped Wade saw how hard he was trying. But every time Silver snuck a glance in Wade's direction, it didn't seem like he had even noticed. The rest of the evening passed agonizingly slow, especially since they couldn't watch TV, and they were barely talking to each other. Shadow was still being stubbornly silent, and Silver didn't want to bother Wade in the slightest. The human kept looking at his phone every few minutes and muttering. Silver had no idea why, but he remembered what he had said about minding his business. The gray hedgehog did his best though. He put his plate into the dishwasher, made sure the trash went out to the bin, took a shower, then brushed his teeth and fur, all without being asked or prompted. After that, he drifted into their shared bedroom, unsure of what else to do. It was still clean from last night, so he didn't need to do that. Climbing the ladder and flopping down on his bed, Silver stared at the wall and worried. Being forced to wait for what Wade was going to do made everything so much worse. Why didn't Wade have an answer yet? Was he really mulling it over that much? A while later, Shadow came into the room. Silver's ears perked as he looked down at him, but Shadow didn't say anything, just went to his own bed. He didn't even glance up at Silver. Sighing, Silver hugged his plush and went back to worrying and wondering what else he could do that might make Wade decide to keep them. He just wanted this to be over, one way or another. The horrible silence returned to the room. Silver was pushing his water bottle back and forth on the blanket when he heard footsteps, and Wade appeared in the doorway. Making sure Silver tugged the blankets up to his chin, suddenly wanting to hide. Usually, both of them did their best to stall in the hope that Wade would forget that they had to go to bed. It never worked, but they still held out hope that one day it might. But now, it was only 8:30, a whole half hour before both of them were already in bed. Wade was frowning, but not in a mean way, as he looked at them.
All right.
He finally said, then shut the door and walked away. Shocked, Silver stared at the inside of the door and then swallowed hard. Usually he gave them each a hug, sometimes read to them or talked about what happened that day or what they'd do the next day. Always tucked them in. Tonight, it was just one word and a shut door. Silver shivered, even though he wasn't cold. Wade must have still been super mad at them if he didn't even want to be around them. Maybe that was the point and what he wanted. Maybe it was just going to stay like this for a long time. Whenever they thought they were safe again, Wade would just say, "Remember what happened with Pete?"
Shadow?
Shh. He'll be even more mad if he hears you.
Coming out from his blankets, Silver hung over the edge of the bed upside down, using his powers to suspend himself in the air, his 5 head quills brushing against the blankets on Shadow's bed.
I was thinking, what if we did something so awful he doesn't want us anymore?
When Shadow turned toward him, it was clear he hadn't thought of that yet.
He'd do that?
I don't know.
Silver admitted, glancing towards the door again. Every fiber of his being wanted to run out to apologize repeatedly, to beg for Wade's forgiveness, and to let them stay here. But maybe he would get angrier if he got out of bed, and he didn't want to do that. He didn't want to bother him.
But he said he didn't know what to do with us.
Shadow was silent and rolled over to face away from Silver.
You better get back into bed.
If they had to leave, it would be all their fault, because they couldn't even realize when they had a good thing I couldn't manage to do the bare minimum to hold on to it. He righted himself and went back into his nest of blankets, hugging his plush close to his chest tightly. Suddenly, it occurred to him that if Wade didn't want to be their dad anymore, they would have to leave this house. No more warm bed, or this plush that he loved, or desserts, or evenings where all 3 of them were curled up on the couch to watch a movie. And if him or Shadow fell asleep out there, Wade would carry them in here. Silver buried his face into the soft fur of the toy as tears came to his eyes. This wasn't fair. He finally had a family, and now it might be taken away just as fast. If Wade did make them leave, he wondered if Wade would let them keep this toy or if he'd take that away too. Maybe he wouldn't kick them out onto the snow, but he'd still make them leave. He never imagined Wade would do something like that, but then again, he had never seen him so angry either. If they have to leave, where would they go? Would Tom and Maddie let them stay over there? Or would they side with Wade, saying they didn't want horrible kids? Would Shadow want to stay with him, or would he also leave to do his own thing, and Silver would be alone? Again, like always. The thought made him cry even harder as he burrowed deeper under the blankets until he was completely hidden, and hoped this wasn't the last night here.